Marketing Your Private Practice is a podcast where you'll learn easy to implement tips and strategies to grow your business without spending all day online. I'm your host, Kathy Colaiacovo, and I teach practitioners the Thrive marketing method to create simple and streamlined plans by focusing on long-term strategies, not just social media. Discover ways to spend less time on your marketing, attract more clients, and build the financial freedom that comes with a thriving practice. One where you have time left in your day for the people and things that matter to you. Hey, private practice heroes. It's Kathy Colaiacovo with the Marketing Your Private Practice with Kathy C podcast. And thanks for tuning in. This is lesson 3 in our special series on marketing your practice in 1 hour a week. Now, to just catch you up if you haven't been following along with these episodes, in the last one, we talked about choosing your content buckets of topics and ideas. We're really looking at trying to get you some ideas for writing content, having a pool of article ideas, and maybe even a full year's worth. We talked about ways that you could come up with ideas for 3 different main topics and having a subtopic for each one. And when you do that, you have 12 different ideas, which would give you 12 different articles if you were going to write an article once a month. Today, we're going to take one of those ideas and write an anchor content, an article. Now, when I talk about these anchor content and article ideas, we're really talking about that main article that is going to be the anchor of your entire MVP system, your minimum viable plan for marketing. We're trying to narrow down the time you spend and give you the minimum amount of time that you need to be effective with your marketing. And that's what this entire MVP plan for marketing is all about, just doing the basics that keeps you active, keeps you putting content out there, making sure that it's effective and can help reach your ideal clients. This whole system is all about helping you do as little as possible with your marketing, but to be as effective as possible as well. And I've seen it happen. I've taught hundreds and hundreds of people how to do this, and it does work. The biggest thing that it can do is help build that consistency that is the most important part of having effective marketing, is making sure that you're doing it on a regular and a consistent basis. What we're walking into today is going through what would be week 1 of marketing your practice in 1 hour a week. If we were going to look at a sample of someone who would do 1 new article a month, so writing 1 new anchor content piece, and then basing all of their marketing on that article, that anchor content that they've written. So in week 1 of your marketing MVP plan, you would be writing and creating the content. That is what we talked about this in the first episode on this entire series that we've got. And in the 4 different weeks, you're going to do something different every week. First week, you're going to write that anchor content article. The second week, you're going to format and create your images for marketing and polish up your posts so they're ready to go on social media. You're going to also spend a little bit of time networking online. In week 3, you're going to prep and format that content that you created, that article, to put out as a newsletter. And you're going to spend a little time networking too. In week 4, you're going to upload your article onto your blog, format it on there, and schedule your social media posts to go out online for the next month. And then you're going to spend a few minutes engaging and connecting and networking online. Those are the 4 weeks that are part of the MVP system, and that's what 1 hour a week could look like if you follow this system. Today, knowing that we have planned out the system, knowing that you have chosen your cycle of content that you want to do, you've picked your content buckets of topics, now we're going to sit down and create that article that is going to be that anchor piece for everything that you're going to do with your marketing. And in week 1, there's a couple things that you write. One is the article. Yes, definitely we're going to create that main piece of content, but you're also going to create some of the social media content that you would use as part of that marketing cycle. And when we get to that, I'll give you a bit of an idea on why we write the social media content at the same time, because there's a specific reason why I always recommend doing that. But let's start off first with what we're doing in creating that anchor content piece. And I'm going to give you some tips to make writing that article as simple as possible and as easy as possible for you too. That's the entire goal of this episode of the podcast, is showing you how you can write that article fast and easy. So let's get into it. One thing I want you to remember as you create this anchor content piece, this article that we're going to create, I want you to remember its purpose. It is acting as the main content hub for each cycle that you create new content. So if it's once a month, once every 2 weeks, whatever it is, this anchor content article is that base foundation. Ultimately, we want it living on your website as a blog post so that the search engines can find it, and so can potential clients. But without having this base article, you end up being someone who starts creating random posts that you put on social and that end up disappearing in that feed of posts. Having that anchor content piece created, number one, stops the randomness of the marketing, but it's also giving you that base. The anchor content article is going to have a main goal of speaking to your ideal client. And because the article itself has that goal, you're not going to be random in what you're creating because the marketing content we create is based on that article. It keeps everything very strategic, keeps it very purposeful, and it stops that randomness that tends to happen. And because you get into a rhythm of how you can do this, that's what builds the ability to do this consistency. That's what builds the ability for you to do this consistently as well, because you've got a whole system on how to do it and how to make it happen. The first thing that you want to do is you want to look back at that bucket of topics that you created, and you want to make sure that you're picking one that you're going to write about. I've chosen my bucket of topic ideas, but I also like to go into a planner that I use, just simple spreadsheet that has the months of the year. And I like to make sure that I'm planning out and looking at these ideas of topics and ensuring that there's a purpose to it if I can make something fit throughout the year. This is where you may look at, are there special events or days of the year or special themes that you could be focusing on that you could pull out one of those topic ideas and make it fit that specific area. For instance, I have a lot of dietitians that I work with that are anti-diet dietitians, and in May, there's Anti-Diet Day. So for them, it makes perfect sense to be writing about that very topic because you can tie it into something that's going on in the world. Sometimes you may be tying stuff into things happening in the world that are happening in the news. So depending on what your topic ideas are, you also want to look at having that plan of what one of these topic ideas are you going to put out each month or each cycle that you're going to use. So you definitely look at those topic ideas, know what you're going to be writing about, and then that's when you're going to get started. Here are some ways to keep that article as simple as possible for you to create. Number one, please remember you're not writing a novel, you're not writing a thesis, you're not writing an essay that someone is going to judge and mark for a degree requirement in school. 500 words, 600, 700 words is enough. And that's literally a page, one page. The best way to think about these articles and writing them is to think of them as a conversation with one client. Because if you can share some of that information that you would tell that one client and put that into a format where you write an article, that's often going to be the best way to write and create an article that your ideal client would want to read. One of the simplest formats that you can follow as you're thinking about what you're writing is to always remember the very basics. You definitely want a hook that is going to catch people's attention. You want an intro that explains, maybe it's a bit about you, maybe it's a bit about what you're going to tell them about. Then you want to teach your key points, share that information you wanted to share, and then follow it up with a conclusion and a CTA, a call to action or a next step. So hook, intro, key points or lessons, and conclusion with a CTA. That's your basic formula for lots of things, I'll be honest. You could use that same formula for a reel on social media. You could use it for a post on social media. You can use it for an article like we're doing here. Let's say you're a dietitian. So your idea for the article could be to share 3 signs that stress in your life is affecting your eating habits. Your hook could be something that speaks to people, that catches their attention. Are you sitting down in front of the TV and just hand over fists eating chips and candy because you had a fight with your spouse? Something like that could be something that would hook people into stopping and reading this information. Then you talk into the intro. Why is stress and emotional stress impacting your eating habits? And then your teaching points could be simple things like what to do when it comes, to work against this challenge that you might have when it comes to late night snacking. Maybe point number 2 would be talking about the cravings you might have for things like sugar, things like that. And don't let me get started into sugar addiction or not. We're not going there. But I'm just going to say this is an idea. Again, I don't have a dietetics degree, but I come up with enough information from having worked with so many clients that sometimes it sounds real, but it's not, folks. My advice on dietetics and nutrition is not real advice. So let's just say point number 2 here that you want to talk about is those cravings people will have. And maybe point number 3 is skipping meals. Those would be the lessons that you want to share. You've got 3 simple points you want to talk about. And then you could have the conclusion. So offer some encouragement, how they can start shifting their patterns, things that they can do. And then a call to action could be something like, this is challenging work. If you need help, that's why a lot of people work with dietitians like me, is because they need the support and the guidance to follow through and make these habit changes happen for the long term. Click here and book a free consult with me to get started, something like that. That's how you can outline a very simple outline for an article. Think about the ideal client you would be saying this to. Write down the advice you often give to them, and then look at how you can format it into some way of that hook, the intro, the key points or lessons, and then the conclusion and CTA. And one thing I just want to say is never forget the CTA. People do this all the time. I check blogs regularly as part of my work with people in my Thrive Marketing Academy and coaching circle. And I can tell you right now that the folks that we're often checking almost always are missing that call to action at the end. So you never, ever want to miss that piece at the end of your article. And I always tell them, if I'm going to look and review your blog, you better make sure you have a call to action at the end, because that's the first thing I typically find is missing from them. Now, you have an idea for the outline. You've got your bucket of topic ideas, but sometimes it is still a challenge for people to write and create that content, especially if you're not a creative person. I want to give you some ideas for finding some inspiration so that you can sit down in 30 or 40 minutes and put together an article, okay? This is the hardest part that I find happens in this process of creating your own marketing content. And I've been teaching people how to do this for 17 years. I will tell you, even before AI came out there, I was showing and sharing with people ways that they could create their own content. Yes, AI has definitely come into play and can help people that aren't as creative and find it hard to come up with some ideas. But I encourage you to try and do this first on your own, okay? If you get stuck, yes, use the ChatGPT if you need to, or whatever AI tool you might be using. But first, start off with a couple ideas that I'll give you on how to find the inspiration for the actual content to write as your article. The biggest thing that I can tell you comes back to often the words they say document you've been saving, which is typically the words that people are saying to you when they get on a consult, the words that they say when they start working with you. These are real client words and questions. And if you can look at creating content and articles and using ideas that are based on real people and their real questions, and thinking about what people ask you the most in consults or what questions they might ask you by email the most if you're working with them or even if you're not working with them, those questions can often become really good article ideas. And for the most part, each question could become one article. It just depends on how you look at it and how you view that question. So when you think about those basic questions that people will ask, then think about what could you say back to the person. Often that's where you can go back and put it into that formula of having 3 key points that you would share with them for their question. So when we go back and think about this example, we were talking about signs that stress is affecting your eating habits. If someone were to say to you, I'm really struggling because I find that I'm doing a lot of late night snacking or reaching for the chips or the candy when my partner and I have an argument or things get stressful or tension is built up in the house. What do I do? Well, that's a question for people in that industry. You're probably answering all the time to people. So an article idea is literally the answers you're giving people. And more likely than not, as you think about what answers you would give back to them, you're probably thinking about 2 or 3 or 5 key points that you're going to give them to help them with that advice. So those tips become some of those lessons that you can share in the articles and in the content. Getting ideas for actual articles on specific topics coming from those real client questions is one way to get inspired for ideas. Another way is to go through past emails or notes on clients or direct messages on social media as well. There are probably lots of questions people have asked in all of those areas that you could then look at and think, oh, I could share 3 tips on this. And again, we're sticking with the 3 tips here because that is the easiest kind of article for people to write. When you're starting out as a first-time person who's creating their own content like this, 3 tips to blah, 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 whatever blah, blah, blah is the easiest type of article that you can create and write. So that's why I'm using that as the example here the most, because it is the easiest one for people to be able to fast and easy put together an article that would work effectively for your anchor content piece and that you can write quickly as well. Going into Facebook groups that you might be part of, or online forums or community groups where your ideal client is in there. Reddit is a great place to find really good information as well for questions that people are asking online as well. Reddit, to be honest, is becoming sort of the Facebook group of the past. What we used to experience there, Facebook and LinkedIn groups, and people are going to Reddit more and more so for those kinds of like, how do you do this? Or does anybody have advice on this? Or does anyone know who? So going into Reddit could be a way to get some ideas as well. Look for questions that people are asking about the topics and the services that you offer so that you could get some ideas. And you just literally look at those questions and think, how would I answer those? And what could I put together? Okay. Look at your calendar. There's a really good website called daysoftheyear.com. Now, some of these days are kind of, fluffy types of days, which is fine, but sometimes they can give you some inspiration on ways to center your article idea around and create something about that. I've written about National Whipped Cream Day before and talked about it as a way that people can use those kinds of calendars and days of the year ideas as ways to inspire article ideas. There's lots that you can do in there as well. And then, of course, the fifth way that you can get ideas too is to use AI, use something like ChatGPT to come up with ideas on what to write about more specifically. Now, if you haven't been able to think of questions people ask, if you don't have a resource for questions people actually ask so that you're looking at real people, questions that you can find, whether it's in a group or your own emails or DMs, then you can go on to one of those AI tools and put a little background in on your services, on your ideal client, put that background in for it, and then ask it to come up with, what are some of the common questions people have about, whatever that topic idea is, or give me 10 article ideas about XXX, which would be your specialty, for clients who are struggling with XXX, which would be a problem. So there's ways to do that and use that information to get it to create articles for you. One thing that I like to do as well is I will often I have an app on my phone called otter.ai, and I use the free version. And what I do is I put on record and I record something, ideas that it might be some topics, it might be lessons that I want to put together, and then I'll put it into an AI tool. And from this information here, come up with 3 ideas for articles that I could use. That's another way to do it. And then you're using your own information. You're not asking it to pull stuff from the internet that might not be related to you. Those are a few ideas and ways to make sure that you're getting that inspiration for what to write about. Now you know a little easy format and formula for writing an article. You've got some ideas for finding the inspiration. And now you literally want to sit down and spend that hour working on this content. I'll be honest, starting out with this, maybe it's going to take you 2 hours because it's something new to you. The goal is to get it up to a place where it's not taking you 2 hours to do this, but it's taking you less time. Because we're not writing an essay. Remember that. We're not writing thousands and thousands of words. Often you might find once you get going, it might be hard to stop at the 500 to 700 words. Don't overthink the grammar. Clear is always better than clever when it comes to this. And don't panic about that. Often I say the best writing is the kind of writing where you write like you talk. Because then as people read it, if that's the way they're going to consume it most of the time, then you're going to find that ultimately you may get some of those compliments like I've had in the past, which are the best ones to get. And that's the compliment of, oh my gosh, you sound exactly the same in person as you do online. If you can get that compliment, you know you are writing really well. So don't worry about overthinking the grammar. I mean, you don't want a bunch of crappy words that are hard to read because you've got commas in the wrong places and you've got a ton of issues that make it challenging. That could be something where you use something like Grammarly or ChatGPT to help you finesse what you've put together. But don't make it so complicated and trying to make it so perfect that you don't get it done. Set a timer for 30 minutes. Get that draft out, and then you can edit later if you need to. It's about consistency. It's not about getting an award, or we're not writing for a literary prize here. We're writing to put good marketing content out there that people understand, that is filled with keywords that will help the search engines and people searching for you find good content to connect to you. And so that's the other part of it, is remember to include keywords in whatever you're writing. That is going to be an important part of this. You don't want to skip those keywords, single words, or phrases that are going to be helpful in helping people find you. So in the example that we're talking about here, having words like the late night snacking, the sugar craving, skipped meals, and, how do you start feeling better about yourself when stress is affecting your eating? How do you eat better when it's very stressful and emotional times? Those are all keywords and phrases. You want to make sure you're including them in what you do with all of this. Once you've written that article and taken maybe 30, 40 minutes to write that out, then what I want you to do, and this is the best way to save time with your marketing and creating the content, I want you to look back at the article, and we're going to start the creation of some of our catalyst content, some of that content that is created to help people read and consume the original article that we've created, the anchor content. So for the rest of this hour that you're going to be working on here in 15 or 20 minutes that you have left, I want you to create 4 social media posts and ideas for 4 images to go with the article. And the reason we do it while we're writing the content is because you're in the moment. You've just written the article. You know what it's all about. You don't have to rethink it. You don't have to go back and reread it to know what to put together for that content you want to pull out of it because you're in the moment. What we're going to do here is create 2 brilliance tips and 2 blog promotional posts. These are part of the 7 pieces of content that you need for your marketing. And a brilliance tip is just simply teaching somebody something in 1 or 2 sentences, and that's it. A blog promotional post is essentially a post for social media that encourages people to click the link to your blog article to read it. Both of these are short and sweet, and you can generally scan your article and copy and paste some of the words in it to use for each one of these. This is why it might take you maybe 10 minutes to write 4 of these posts, because we're going to keep them simple. We're not writing a thesis. We're not writing an essay. Remember, minimum viable plan. This is all about streamlining your marketing, okay? Look back at what you've written and think, is there a line or 2 I can pull out of that? This is where you could use AI and give it a prompt that you use over and over each week and say something like, here is the content for my article. I want you to pull out 2 one-line sentences that are educational tips that teach something about the topic I'm writing about. And that would probably easily pull up and create those brilliance posts that we're talking about. And then the blog promotional posts are ones that, I'll be honest, they often sound like an advertisement for reading the blog article, but that's okay. That's what we want. We want to tell people to go read the article. This is something a lot of people forget to do, and it's a key part of your marketing. You have to also be telling people, hey, I've got this great article on blah, blah, blah. Click here and read it. So you want to make sure that you pull some of those out of there as well. And so that should take you, once you build up a little bit of comfort level with this, maybe 10 minutes to do, because you're literally copy and pasting out of the article that you've already created. So then what I want you to do with the last 10 minutes left in your hour is to come up with 4 image ideas. So this is really looking for and pulling out very short tips from the article that could be put onto an image to go with the article. Or you can just think of a plain image to go with the article as well. The one topic that we've been looking at here is emotional stress eating, snacking. So maybe you want an image that shows somebody watching TV and eating snack food. You're just coming up with the 4 ideas for the images here. You're not making them, okay? You're not putting these images together. You're just writing an idea so that you remember when we come back next week in the hour that we're going to use, you'll remember exactly what you wanted to create for the images. You'll have the tips that you want to format and use for social media. You'll have the blog promotional content that you want to use as well. Once you've done all of that, then week 1 is done. And that's where we're going to stop at this point. You've written the article, you've got your social media posts, you've got the image ideas, you're done. That's it. We are finished for this week and our hour is up. And this is where I want you to remember, this is all part of the whole cycle. So that 1 hour that we've put here, I really do want you to stop at this point and not continue until next week. Now that we've created the article and we've pulled out the 2 brilliance tips, the 2 blog promotional posts, and ideas for images, next week, part of the time is going to be spent actually creating those for social media and creating the images. So you don't want to spend it now. Your hour is up. You've written your article and you've created some of the social media content that you need for that cycle. That's it. You're finished. And then you can move on. And I really do mean that. This cycle, this MVP plan for marketing that I teach, and doing 1 hour a week for marketing your practice or your business is really based on do what you need to do in the hour and finish and come back to it next time. Next time when we come back, you've got part of this written. So the next piece is actually creating and putting the social media content together, creating the images, adding emojis or other things you might need for the content. It's all ready to go. You're just going to do the formatting part of all of this. And that's it. That is your week here. A couple tips for you to remember. Take that bucket of content ideas that you created and plan out your cycle. Know what you're going to do here. Then when it's time to sit down and write your first article, that's where you're going to spend that 1 hour. You're going to write the article, keep it at 500 to 700 words, use that simple 3-4 point outline, hook, intro, lesson, recap, call to action. Once you've got the full article together, pull out those 2 brilliance tips and the 2 blog promotional posts and the ideas for images. The ideas for images will be a lot easier to do if you've created some template ideas for what you want to use. This is something that I do, and I forgot to mention it in the earlier episodes. And when I was recently doing planning for a one-day workshop, I realized I missed a key part in this. Images are made a lot faster and easier if you have a system for them. So if you have a template for your images and you have a template for the kinds of images and you sort of refer to them as a specific type. For me, I actually have very specific types each week that I do. I have one that's a very simple image. I call it my entrepreneur private practice tip image. And that, if you go look on my Instagram, you'll find it. It's a very plain image with just a few words. And I think Pepper, an icon picture of Pepper is on them as well. Then I have a image that I use each week. I call my takeaway image. It's a carousel post of images. I have a template, and I would share 3 lessons that are takeaways from the podcast episode each week. And then I also have a carousel steps image. So these are images where I will put in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 steps, whatever it might be that I've taught that week in the lesson. So because I have these templates already made, coming up with the ideas for the images is a lot easier. That's a key part of making sure that you can spend this 1 hour a week on your marketing is you've got to have a system for your images. So you've got to know what kind of images you need each week and have a template for them. And that's going to keep everything down to a very minimal amount of time to create those images. It's how I get people to follow my 5 minutes max rule of marketing images, is because you have the templates all set in play. So once you've got all of those ready, the article, the brilliance tips, the blog promotional posts, and the image ideas, you're done for the week. And now you're going to come back to it next week and spend another hour on what we're going to talk about in the next episode. That will be week 2, where we take your article and create that catalyst content, which is the content intended to help more people click and read the article that you created and that content piece you created. That's what we'll be doing on the next episode. Make sure you do hit follow wherever you're listening into the podcast so you get notified of when that next episode is all ready. And that is it for today. This is Kathy Colaiacovo saying thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And I hope you're ready next week to work on week 2 of how you can market your practice or business in 1 hour a week. And remember, to thrive in practice or business starts with consistent marketing. And that one clear article is the anchor for your entire cycle of new content. That's what we created today. And stick with me next week to learn what we'll do with the next hour for marketing your practice or your business. I'll see you next time. You can find all of our show notes and resources mentioned at marketingyourprivatepractice.com. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram at pepperitmarketing and say hi. I'd love to hear any feedback you have, and make sure to rate and review the podcast and hit subscribe on your favorite player so you don't miss any future episodes.